This is the 2025-26 Harlan Institute Virtual Supreme Court competition. This is the round of 4, the second map. We just had 2 teams before. We'll do it all over again. This year, in honor of America's 250th birthday, we are celebrating the case of patriots versus loyalists. Should America declare independence in the year 1776? Representing the petitioners, we have from Greenwich High School in Connecticut, Caitlin Quinn and Diana Davidson. Representing the respondents, the loyalists, we have from the Baldwin School in Pennsylvania, Eileen Wang and Sarah Tarka. We have distinguished judges, Judge Kyle Duncan from the U.S. Court of Appeals at the Fifth Circuit, my home circuit, and Judge Gregory Maggs from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, also a law professor at George Washington. And I will be serving as a pinch-hitting judge today. Counselors, begin.
Counsel, you may approach whoever is
the block. Yes. And you'll have 10 minutes, 5 minutes for rebuttal, and 15 minutes to the other side.
Fellow delegates, and may it please the court. My name is Diana Davidson, and along with my co-counsel, Caitlin Quinn, we represent the petitioner's side of this case. Quote, all men have a right to remain in a state of nature as long as they please, and in case of intolerable oppression, to leave the society they belong to and enter into another, said Samuel Adams in his pamphlet, Rights of the Colonies.
Today, we stand before you to answer a single question. At what point does the government stop protecting liberty and start destroying it? We argue that Great Britain has crossed that line through 1, economic exploitation, 2, denial of representation, and 3, loss of liberties. Independence is only considered after repeated attempts at reconciliation. Britain has responded with coercive actions like the Massachusetts Government Act and the Court Act. Therefore, the colonies are legally and morally justified in declaring independence.
First, economic exploitation sets the foundation for the colonists' need for independence. As John Dickinson continuously highlights, the Stamp Act imposed duties on the colonies not for the promotion of a mutually beneficial system, but simply for the sole purpose of collecting money without regard to the expense on the colonies. Evidently, taxes and trade restrictions have stifled the economic growth and prosperity of these colonies.
In addition, representation is fundamentally lacking. Samuel Adams states, this continent of 3,000 miles, in which there are 5 million people, has the least voice in the British Parliament. It inherently defies logic to have an island responsible for governing a continent, as Thomas Paine further emphasizes in his pamphlet Common Sense.
Finally, a loss of liberties makes separation from the crown a necessary and an ethical argument. The Declaration of Causes and Necessities of Taking Up Arms denounces the king, expressing, quote, his troops have butchered our countrymen, have wantonly burnt Charleston, our ships, our vessels, our seas.
Therefore, as the Continental Congress declared on July 2nd, 1776, independence is not rebellion, it is a lawful termination of tyranny. We urge a decision in favor of the petitioners. Thank you, and we welcome questions from the Assembly.
Fellow delegates, you make a very strong case, but if we go back to the root causes, all this seems to be about taxation. And I think we have to view Parliament's position with some sympathy, don't we? After all, they spent enormous sums in the French and Indian War, protecting our interests. And isn't it only fair that we contribute more to the Treasury based on what they've done for us already?
Thank you, Delegate, for that question. We absolutely are in favor of a situation in which taxation exists and there is this ongoing economic relationship. Our qualms here and in this situation are simply a lack of representation. If we are going to have this level of taxation, but not that level of communication that is necessary to uphold the system, we just fundamentally have a problem in supporting the rights of the colonists.
In addition, one of the 4 intolerable acts was the Boston Port Act, which closed Boston Harbor until the colonists paid all of the tea. This effectively strangles the Massachusetts economy, and to an extent, the British Crown can tax the colonies. However, it has to be limited because simply right now, their economies are being stifled.
But I mean, again, it all goes to taxation. The British tried to tax the colonies by taxing the tea, and the result was the tea was thrown into the harbor and wasted. I'm thinking that, you know, it might be popular in Boston where there's so many radicals, but how would a normal person in England perceive what we're doing here?
I think the question in this situation isn't only simply taxation, but it's also the situation in which the taxation is existing. Right now, the colonists have been limited to the Britain East India Company for their tea, right? They're already limited in their ability to export, which hurts their freedom in the economic system. Furthermore, as a mercantilist vessel to the Kingdom of Great Britain, they don't have that autonomy to make their own economic decisions and to develop more relationships.
Do you know whether people in Great Britain pay more for tea than the colonists do?
Well, we answer with the fact that the colonists are being governed across an ocean, right? They have 5 million people
Yes, but
on
do
this
you know
continent.
whether people in Great Britain pay more for tea than the colonists?
There's a lot more variety of prices of things in Britain because there are more sources of items, right? They have a much more diversified economy, whereas we're limited in our economic abilities because we are only able to get tea from one source, which sets prices.
Well, let's say you do succeed in gaining independence, you'll form your own polity, you'll form your own nation. It may have some states or colonies or whatever, whatever you call them, constituent parts. And there will inevitably just be disagreements over tea and taxation and all sorts of things. If you can declare independence, can the constituent parts of your new nation declare independence from you if there is a disagreement about taxation?
Delegate, this is a great question. And we do want to emphasize the fact that, as John Locke states in his second treaty, people have the ability to overthrow the government if they believe that there has been abuses and oppression from the government. Therefore, even after once we declare independence, say there is a new king or a new monarch system, we are again allowed to overthrow the government. We have that agency, therefore the colonists should have the right to do so.
So, true or false then? If you win, there will just be more chaos and division in the world.
Delegate, this is false because our colonies are united.
Now, so what country does tea come from?
It comes from a variety of countries.
Do those countries have good relations with the United Kingdom?
Yes, Delegate.
So do you think tea will be cheaper if we fight a war with the mother country? I mean, a lot of tea's from India, maybe. India's have English. I mean, will this actually make tea cheaper? I want to just push my fellow justices question.
It may temporarily be more expensive. However, under the system of salutary neglect, we were able to export tea and have trade relationships with other countries and other people outside of the realm of what the British government had been directly permitting. So arguably, we already have this development of relationships that we could expand further in a system where we did have that independence.
But I want to go back to the question my fellow delegate posed. I mean, who likes taxes? No one, right? No one likes taxes. And it's really the case that anytime people commit taxes, they can say, all right, we're going to fight, we're going to start a nation. How can you ever have a country? I mean, even let's just assume for argument's sake that we declare independence and win. I think it's very unlikely. Who's going to tax, right? Will there be some central taxing authority? Will any of our states agree on a central taxing authority? It seems like there's a recipe for just chaos where all these states are going to fight each other.
Delegate, this is a really good question. And yes, there will always be taxes. However, the colonists want taxes by a body that is closer governed to home, right? Because right now the government
Who will
system,
tax all 13 states? What will this body look like?
the colonies will come together as we are united.
Are they united? I mean, there's no polling data on this, but has there been a census taken about how many of the states actually agree with independence? Has that been done? Do we even know?
We don't have the polling capacity at this time. However, we do have common opinion. When we look at pamphlets like Common Sense.
Oh, that's propaganda by these radicals. My goodness, Thomas Paine, my goodness. Give me something better than that. I mean, look, why don't we have state conventions, right? Why don't we actually send this back to each state legislature, right? All the states have legislatures. Why don't the legislatures then appoint conventions to decide yay or nay in the declaration? Why should the 50-something people in this room sign a death warrant for the rest of this continent?
We have a lot of collaboration going around in these regional bodies, but I'd also like to look at something Patrick Henry said. He is a very, very prominent speaker on these issues, right? In Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death, he was talking about how Virginia needs to prepare for war because there is such strong division that we aren't in a situation where we feel like we can continue under this system. He is a prominent leader and person in government. Furthermore, when we look at the Quartering Act, we can take it outside of the macro scale of propaganda and look simply in a home. People are having soldiers quartered in their homes against their
Where else are they
will.
gonna live? I mean, don't we need them to protect us from the Indians in the front? There's a useful purpose of quartering. It's not just because we're trying to be offensive.
However, the soldiers have also taken houses that are the colonists. And again, we have the right of property as one of the core principles that defines our nation.
Do you think, I'll ask the same question from the other side. Do you think that the colonists have the same rights as Englishmen? The
Yes.
exact same corpus of rights?
We believe that they should have the same rights as
And where's that come from? Does the English Bill of Rights apply in total to the colonists?
the English system of government functions mainly out of tradition, and that is.
What about people in India and Australia and other Commonwealth countries? Do they also have the same rights as Englishmen? Or just us, are we special?
We're not special. I think we're arguing that in this situation, we should have the same rights as Englishmen. That doesn't mean that people in other British territories should not. It simply means that from our perspective, that is something we deserve the right to have.
Additionally,
Councilman, may I ask you a question? You've argued on a theoretical basis that we should have equal rights, that we should have natural rights. But to what extent should practical considerations be influencing our decision? For example, like, are we gonna win this war? Do we want to pay the price for fighting this war for a long time? Are we all gonna be able to stick together throughout this long war? I mean, in other words, should we decide this based solely on your theoretical arguments about the rights of man, or should we also take into account the practical considerations, the cost, the losses that we'll suffer?
Delegate, there isn't exactly time for legislative processes because we tell you that the war has already been starting. And additionally, it's not a matter of whether we can, but whether we can put all of our forces into it because the war has already begun. Part of the Solvig resolves is that colonists have already started to boycott different acts such as the Intolerable Acts, and they've begun forming their own militias. Therefore, we have to continue this because it's an effort that's already begun.
Furthermore, the economic argument.
And thank you, your time's expired. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly.
Council, you may proceed.
Fellow delegates, and may it please the Continental Congress, my name is Sarah Tarka, and alongside my co-counsel Eileen Wang, we represent the respondents, the Loyalists. This case asks whether the colonies should declare independence. The answer to that is no, for two reasons. First, the Patriots cannot satisfy Locke's standard for justified revolution, and second, the Crown did not forfeit its authority. We do agree that people have natural rights, but we contend that it's the Patriots that are actually obstructing these natural rights, not the Crown.
We contend that the Patriots cannot satisfy Locke's conditions for justified revolution. We concede that when rulers truly act beyond the bounds of the law, act in their own interests, and leave the people with no lawful remedy, revolution can be justified. But that's far from this case. This is the Patriots' preferred framework, and even under it, they still fail. That's because Locke requires a free judgment by the body of the people. But it's well documented that the Patriots threatened printers with the loss of their livelihoods and their homes for publishing loyalist views. They forced dissenters into recantations and resignations. And they instilled so much fear that people even approached the British Army for protection, the very same army that's now being portrayed as an agent of tyranny.
And so, where are we going with this? Because after all, the Continental Congress has funded that army, and George Washington and General Knox and others have led it. Are we all traitors and all committing crimes against natural law here? I mean, if we don't declare independence, and won't we all be punished?
Well, Your Honor, yes, the Patriots have been violating natural rights throughout the course of this entire conflict. They have tarred and feathered tax officials in the streets. They have burned the Marblehead Hospital. They have threatened to burn people.
What about the delegates, you, me, and the rest of us, all the delegates to the Continental Congress? We created the United States Army. We funded it. We put General Washington in charge of it. Aren't we equally culpable then of violating natural rights? In your view?
Well, Your Honor, first of all, the Continental Congress is an illegitimate body of governance. It is not recognized by the British government as an authorized source. We have created illegitimate legislators and tribunals, even executing colonists in the colonies without proper trials. And we have funded this army, but we are supporting the Patriots' efforts of violence. The Patriots have been using violence from the very
I
beginning.
guess to re-echo what Judge Maggs is asking, given what you're saying, I understand this body to be a body of traitors and liable to the penalties for treason, which are severe under British law. And given how far this has gone already, what alternative do we have but to continue to seek independence?
Well, fellow delegate, actually, the substantial portion of colonists are either in support of the government.
How do you know that?
Well, this is a fact that's well documented by primary sources, for example, Massachusetts Census by Daniel Blenner. It's well known that the Patriots are simply.
Was there census taken? It was some sort of, I mean, how does that primary source know this, that you said substantial support for independence? How do we know this?
This is just a public observance. In fact, he says these and thousands besides them will fight under the
Wasn't it
banners of
just revolutionary propaganda? How do we know this though?
Well, Your Honor, yes, Daniel Leonard is a loyalist, so you can consider him to be a biased source. Biased sources may contain inflammatory rhetoric. They may discuss certain events in the light that benefits them the most. However, to contend that he's fabricating facts is not necessarily true.
Okay.
It is a fact that the Patriots have burned hospitals, that they have enacted violence, and it's a fact that the vast majority of colonists are completely neutral to this entire conflict, that they have no desire for war, for independence, and a substantial portion of the colonists are loyalists. So to your question, what is our path forward? Our path forward is reconciliation with the majority of the colonies, as they are loyalists or neutral citizens. I mean,
What happens to George Washington?
well, Your Honor, they will be executed. The ringleaders of this unlawful rebellion will be executed because
A lot of
Parliament and governments have,
Adams,
especially Adams, John Henry,
Why especially Adam? What did he do?
all of them,
I'm sorry, I won't break
Traitors.
all of them.
Okay, fine. I'm grateful for your candor.
Counsel, in that light, is there some compromise position that would make more sense? The delegates who support independence say we should declare independence. You say we shouldn't declare independence. Is there some compromise position? Maybe we leave it up to the individual states to decide, the individual colonies to decide whether to declare independence. Maybe we agree on something short of independence. It just seems to me that the two choices are so extreme that there must be some middle ground.
Your Honor, the middle ground is the body of the people have a right to decide whether we are an independent nation or not. And I could see your point if this was a majority opinion, like the colonies were exactly split, some wanted independence and some don't want independence. But the reality of the situation is that the Patriots are a very small faction of the colonists.
Well, maybe we should have, maybe instead of declaring independence or not declaring independence, we should postpone the matter and have referenda or conventions in each state to determine by vote what the people wants to do.
Well, Your Honor, that is a good point. A head count may be possible. However, it is impractical, and as our friends on the other side have mentioned, war has already begun. The Battle of Lexington and Concord occurred last year. The first shot of the war has already been fired, so we have already entered into a state of war with Great Britain. So the government.
We can forgive the British for attacking us and trying to take our arms and all the other terrible things they do if they are willing to make certain concessions. And I'm sure from the other point of view, they would be willing to forgive some of the things that our side has done if we are willing to make, the colonists are willing to make concessions. I'm just trying to think of what would be a good alternative. Is there any alternative, or must we decide either independence or no independence?
Your Honor, there is no alternative. This is how governments function. A colony is the subservient of the motherland. This has been a practice that is extended across all different types of governments. There is no compromise. We are a colony. The majority of our colonists are happy with their living
Do
circumstances.
you agree in the abstract with the writings of John Locke that there's some line, some long train of abuses that triggers revolution? Do you agree with that principle in the abstract?
Yes, Your Honor, we agree.
But why do you agree? In other words, if I get why you're referring to this side of the petitioners agree, but why do you have to accede to this national law principle? Why can't you say that's not positive, that's not statute? We don't, John Locke was a fun author, he wrote some nice books, some treatises on government, but why do you have to agree with that principle?
Well, Your Honor, the principles of John Locke are baked into the way that English government functions. We find it to be disingenuous to deny Locke's ideas because the 1689 English Bill of Rights explicitly affirms his ideas. It protects the notion.
So does that Bill of Rights, can you ask the same question to your friends on their side? Do the rights listed in the English Bill of Rights, do they apply in full force to the colonists?
Yes, Your Honor, they do apply in full force because per the colonial charters, the colonies have the same rights as
No, Your Honor, sorry.
Oh, which one is it?
No, Your Honor, the English Bill of Rights does not apply in full force to the colonies. According to taxation, no tyranny, in wide extended dominions, a very small part of the people are either primarily or secondarily consulted in legislation. It's simply impractical for example, the right to.
Yeah, I got it. I'm sorry. I know there's disagreement, but the colonial charters reference the English Bill of Rights?
We are not sure, Your Honor, as they were listed in our sources, but we assume that they do.
Okay. All right. Well, let's assume that. Let's assume for a moment that they are right. Let's assume that the freedmen, this is part one, more competition. The colonists have these rights. They have these rights in the Bill of Rights. How does this lack of full representation comport with being free Englishmen?
Your Honor, we contend that they are represented through the doctrine of virtual representation. This is a wholly lawful doctrine, and most citizens living in the British colonies also may not be represented if they are women or if they're not able to vote, and yet we are all still governed the same. We all still have, maybe not direct, but we are all still represented.
How are they, what does that mean, virtual representation? How are they represented?
The concept of representation by virtue is built into the way that Parliament functions. Parliament has the obligation to legislate for the welfare of the entire empire.
But they have no say in let's say taxation or some policy that affects their daily lives. They have no actual say. They have to hope in sort of the benevolence of Parliament. Is that what virtual representation means?
To some extent, yes, Your Honor. However, that's how governments function. Perfect direct representation is an ideal and it's not a reality. Even in the mother country, according to taxation no tyranny, the colonists are represented by the same virtual representation as a greater part of Englishmen. So this principle doesn't even apply in full force in the mother country, and not to mention the other colonies of the British Empire. It's simply impractical to declare independence, to rebel on the basis of the fact that the government has failed to achieve an ideal that no government has achieved.
So let me shift gears for a second. You conceded that under the Lockean principle, there's some point in which we've crossed the line into tyranny that would justify a polity dissolving its relationship with another polity. Why wasn't that line crossed when the Crown or Parliament abolished the Massachusetts government?
Well, Your Honor, the Crown was completely justified in abolishing the Massachusetts government because they were trying to stop mob violence, and the government was a flawed government. The governor was restrained without council concurrence, and this was necessary for the welfare of the country.
The Massachusetts government allowed the Boston Tea Party to occur. Governor Hutchinson was incapable of preventing this illegal assembly of patriots. He had instructed them to disperse, and they refused to. And instead, they dumped 10,000 pounds worth of tea into the Boston Harbor, enacting domestic terrorism. This clearly shows that the Massachusetts government is ineffective, and it was necessary. In fact, it was an obligation of the British Parliament to restructure
And
Massachusetts.
who was replaced? Who were the members of the legislature replaced with council?
Well, Your Honor, we're not.
Wasn't it just the royalists? Didn't he just put in the royal governors to replace the legislatures?
Yes, Your Honor, because the executive function in the Massachusetts government was too weak, as there was a council that needed to.
And how is that better representation? So that people being represented by their own elected representative, they're being represented by a bunch of the king's cronies.
Well, as we've already stated, fellow delegate, this representation isn't ideal, but it's very hard to put it into reality. The reality is that they were trying to stop mob violence. This is for the good of the colonies. This is for the welfare of the entire empire. And so sometimes it is necessary to govern countries as you see fit and not listen to every single colonist's want and desire.
This is the same logic that applies to the British use of vice admiralty courts. Yes, you can make the argument that it's unconstitutional. However, it was done for the good of the people. As
Are there
colonial-
juries in these admiralty courts?
Yeah. I believe so, Your Honor, although they are not a jury of peers. However, there's a reason for that because all the colonial juries were ruling that smugglers were innocent, despite the fact that there's ample evidence against these people. Over and over again, John Hancock was ruled innocent, despite the fact that he is a rampant smuggler. So
John Adams dead, John Hancock really dead.
Can you go back to the specific question of whether we should adopt the Declaration of Independence? You've seen the draft of the Declaration of Independence, and you oppose it. Can you tell me what is wrong with it? Are there any errors in the logic or any of the statements in the Declaration of Independence? I mean, I know you are opposed to independence in general, but I'm just focusing on the document. What would be your three biggest criticisms of what is said in the Declaration of Independence?
Your Honor, accepting the Declaration of Independence would be accepting the Patriots' repeated violation of the laws of the country, and that would be the acceptance of anarchy. We cannot allow this Declaration of Independence because accepting it would be legitimizing this unlawful rebellion.
Well, I understand that's your overall position, but I'm just focusing on the document itself. Is it wrong in saying that all men are created equal? Or is it wrong in saying that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed? Is it wrong in saying that the king has repeatedly disapproved laws passed by the assemblies? Is there anything you disagree, not the big question, but just the document? Is there anything wrong with that document?
yes, Your Honor, while the overarching framework of the Declaration, for example, what you mentioned, the existence of natural rights, we agree with that. However, the application of that framework is completely incorrect. The British have not acted tyrannically. The list of grievances that the colonists have are completely illegitimate because the British acted within the bounds of the law through the doctrine of virtual representation in enacting every piece of legislation that was leveled upon the colonies.
Thumbs up, Council.
Thank you.
For these reasons, we pray that the court rule in the favor of respondents and refute them.
The Republicans.
Delegates, do we stand here today as traitors? Accepting the loyalist side is accepting that we today do not have a right to these conversations and discussions about our own lives. They propose execution as something that is on the table for initiating these conversations, yet Lockean principles support the idea that we have a right to these discussions. I ask you, is a system in which execution for conversation is even an option one we would like to live in?
It's not just execution for conversation. We're not just signing some idle document. The Declaration is a charter saying that we are no longer under the king's rule. That's treason, black letter law. Go read Blackstone, right? So, and maybe you're a little bit, exaggerating, passion, but like law here, right? This is not just about conversations. If that's all it was, they could have executed Jefferson and Adams years ago.
In their claim, they were saying that this body does not have a right to exist.
Does
and
it?
that Yes.
Do we have the consent of the crown?
we have the consent of our people, and government is supposed to support the people.
But how do you know that? I mean, you cited Locke, you cited natural law. How do you know that this body must have support of the people? Why do we not need the support of the sovereign? I mean, there's a fundamental question. What does sovereignty mean?
The ability to have self-governance, and under salutary neglect, we did have a system in which there was.
Isn't the sovereign in our polity King George III? And it's been that since before Magna Carta, in fact, not even 500 years.
Yes, however, our colonists are supporting right now our actions of the Patriots, but they are not supporting the British's because the British has had a legitimate governance. And we tell you this is due to 3 reasons. The first of which being, as Samuel Adams states in the Rights of the Colonists, taxation violates both the natural law and the English Constitution. Additionally, secondly, there has to be a social contract, as Locke states. Governance comes from
So
the
can you
consent
tell
of
me, you keep talking about this fellow Locke. He's a modern writer, he's liberal. Why should I care what he says?
Locke sets a really good principle of governance and explains how an effective government should work, which is exactly what we are determining today. And the most critical thing he says is that once a government begins oppressing its population, they have the
Where did you
agency
get
to
this from?
overthrow.
I mean, what, lots of people wrote stuff, we read Shakespeare, right? I mean, why are we giving Locke so much credit?
Simply because this principle makes sense, right? If we have a government that is oppressing us, isn't listening to us, isn't properly representing us, then why shouldn't we overthrow to have a better governance?
Why should we? Because we might wind up dead. She's gonna kill John Adams in 5 minutes, right? I mean, that's a good reason, isn't it?
Should that even be on the table is our point here. And I think aside from Locke and aside from these great thinkers, when we look at the sentiment among the public, the other side is arguing this is how government functions, and we don't believe that should inherently
Well,
be true.
if we continue with this war, the sentiment among the public may change because I don't see how you're going to win.
We think the opportunity cost of staying in a status quo in which oppression is something we should be widely accepting is much higher than us taking a chance.
What happens if they start bombing our bridges and our water plants? And what are we gonna do then?
As the other side stated, the war has already begun. We're already in this situation.
Delegate, we have to look at alternatives because Thomas Paine states in Common Sense that reconciliation is impossible. Inherently, the British Crown will always use the colonists as a method of economic exploitation for their own trade, for their own
Isn't that
wars.
why you have colonies?
Well, the point is that the British have been taxing the colonists way too much, and due to the mercantilist framework, that inherently means that the colonists
Do they
are being
treat
used-
other colonies the same way? India, for example?
Just because they do doesn't mean that it's right.
That's true. That's, I don't know, but so you think it's wrong the way they treat the Indian?
So we're not special.
We're not special.
So all people around the world have a right of revolution.
Not necessarily, but if they do feel that they are being
Can I ask you a
oppressed.
question about slaves?
Yes. So under the systems of slavery that we currently have, we believe that there's a higher likelihood of abolishing slavery if we do have independence than there is.
Men are created equal. That's very lofty language for a slaveholder, isn't it?
Delegates,
Yes and no.
yes, delegates, we believe that we do have this right. And as our opponents stated, that Englishmen don't have the representation as well, meaning that they should also be able to overthrow. However, we tell you that 2 wrongs don't make a right. And we also encourage others because right now we simply have been operating under an oppressive government. Therefore, as John Locke has stated multiple times, we do have that right to overthrow.
Well, do your governments allow women to vote?
In some cases, yes. We also haven't
Really?
we haven't developed the government yet. We have many opportunities now in the system to create a bright future that hasn't yet existed.
Delegate, once we further develop our liberty, we're going to be going down this trend, and we believe that more liberties will also be allowed. Thank you, and we urge a decision in favor of the petition side.
Submitted. It's submitted.
Submitted.
All right,
Thank you, council.
All right, so now, again, we're not gonna announce the winner. We haven't deliberated yet on the 14th, but we're happy to just give you some feedback. You can ask some questions. Is that okay? All right,
Very good. I'll tell you what I told the other side because it applies equally to you, to the other groups, that you obviously know this material very well. So you should be, I congratulate you for doing that. This is not easy. It is not easy at all to do this, very artificial, right? Because we know how this all turned out against all odds, it turned out well. But you stayed in character and argued from the point of view of the sources at the time, which, I mean, that requires some, it's sort of not just play acting, it's you have to actually sort of inhabit this headspace. And that's what lawyers do. If I don't know if you're going to go on to law school, but that's what lawyers do. Lawyers, you don't necessarily agree with everything that you're arguing, but you're making the argument for your client based on the best the best thing you can say based on the authorities, and that's what you're doing, and so I appreciate that. You were willing to give We'll talk about this more. You're willing to give hard answers to hard questions. Shall we execute John Adams?
Especially John Adams.
Okay. I mean, if you had said no, that wouldn't have been credible, right? Oh, no, we'll let him off. Really? He's a traitor. I forget, I asked them whether, what did you say when I said, can the new colonies, when you have new nation, can they split off? Did you say yes?
We said yeah.
Okay, well, I think you have to say that. What are you supposed to say? We can break off from Great Britain, but now the new ones can't break off from us? You know, we'll have to have a civil war about 100 or so years
Four
after.
score 7 years later.
7 years later, we'll discover the answer is no, actually, you can't.
I went to Lincoln Memorial yesterday, it's.
Yes, no, and I mean, I'm glad it turned out that way, because otherwise we wouldn't have a country. But well done, well done. We asked you hard questions. I do this for a living. This is what I do. I sit in court and harass lawyers. And that's what I do. And I didn't hold back. So well done, well done.
Just facts.
Well, obviously, all four of you have prepared quite well, and that's why you're here in the final quarter round. You know, I'm very, very impressed not only with your knowledge of the materials, but just how well spoken you are. I think it's also challenging to coordinate with two speakers, and I think you have to practice quite a bit to make it come off as well. You know, I think this is what happens in a real court case. You know, obviously this isn't a court case, but when an issue is to be decided, we listen to arguments from both sides, and we're always worried about, well, that sounds pretty good, but what about this? What about that? For fear that we might make the wrong decision. And that's really what the council helps us with. Council also helps us with understand points that we might not have understood just from reading the materials. I think all of you were very good at answering the questions that were asked. You know, it's very frustrating when the judge wants to know the answer to a question and ask the question, but then there's just no answer. It's sort of like, well, I guess I'll just have to assume the worst. So you did a very good job in answering those questions. I think another thing you did well was after the questions were over, to the extent time permitted, you pivoted back to your main arguments. And that's another thing that is very important in an advocate, because you can get sidetracked and going off on a tangent, lose sight of your ultimate goal.
Very good. Yeah, so you actually were both right. So when you disagree with each other, you are correct, Sarah, that in the colonial charters, it absolutely said the English Bill of Rights would extend. And you were also correct that a number of contemporary writers by the time in 76 said, no, it doesn't. So you were both right. I wish you hadn't disagreed, or you could say it's both. So it's actually curious because you knew the material so well that you both answered the question correctly. And the answer to the question is sort of, it depends, it's both. So I won't hold it against you. You could maybe smooth that over a little better, but you also didn't get flustered, right? You kind of just moved on. And I could have seen, oh man, you're not done, right? Your argument went very well, both before and after that. So but you're both right. I thought both teams did well. Even economics, it's an opportunity cost mercantil. That's a lot. Yeah.
We're in the same AP econ class.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah, the question about the price of tea, I actually don't know. I'm guessing with all the tea routes and all the English colonies in the Far East, tea probably got more expensive. I'm just guessing.
I thought I read in the brief, somebody said that tea, they were paying less in the colonies for tea than they were in.
That's not true, yeah.
I thought that was a fun fact.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
The tax, in other words, wasn't that. It wasn't that
owners. Yeah, but I think it's. I want to just echo what Judge Duncan said. There are some very hard questions that you have to sort of bite the bullet on, and it might sound unpleasant. One of them is on women voting. Another one's on slavery. Another one's on the constituent parts to then declare independence. Of course, John Adams, especially John Adams, has to see the noose. But I think they'll have to hang together. They hang hard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And good answer, whoever gave it on the, well, you don't let women vote. And the answer to that as well, if you give us independence, maybe people, there'll be an opportunity for people to have more freedoms than they do today. That's a good way to defang that question.
Yeah, and also, this was not about slavery. It wasn't in the competition. I kind of just threw it at you along the same lines as Judge Duncan's question, because we're saying, really, all men have the right to revolution. all of them, right? You know, all right, Thomas. But, you know, what's fascinating about Jefferson is that his words gave inspiration to generations of slaves to sort of fight for freedom. And I just went to the Lincoln Memorial just yesterday. And we hold these, you know, we see what happened 7 years later. Fun fact, I give fun fact before, the 13th Amendment, either slavery or involuntary servitude shall exist. The language comes directly from a draft written by Thomas Jefferson for the Northwest Ordinance in 1785 or 6. So basically Jefferson wrote the draft that would become the 13th Amendment. He didn't quite live to see it, that had to go through the Civil War and Lincoln. But I think both teams very well. You're all very polished, you're all very well spoken. There were not lots of ums and buts and pauses. I think your cadences were quite good. I didn't hear rush delivery. I speak quickly, I'm sorry. But I didn't hear very rushed delivery. You're also very just poised. I know you're what, juniors, high school? Oh my goodness. 15, 16, 17 years old. If you told me you were a law student, I'd believe it. You could walk into a law school tomorrow and do a moot court competition. All four of the teams.
Yeah, if you want to go to law school, and I'm not saying that you should, it's a possibility.
You can just
you would do well. I mean, you're operating at a level like, comparable to law students, which is impressive, I have to say. And trust me, I see a lot of bad arguments in court.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, and it's painful. It's people who don't know the materials, who haven't thought through what they want to say to the court. My only advice to you, I guess, is you have so much information in your heads. Understandably, you have to pack everything in your head about, what did Dickinson say, right? The Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, who was a brilliant oral advocate before he became the Chief Justice, recorded a video once for oral advocates and about how he prepared for arguments. And he said, and this helped me a lot when I was a lawyer, he said, look, cases are very complex, lots of information. You might think there are 20 points that you want to make, but actually you really only want to make about 3 or 4. And you need to boil down your arguments to just 3 or 4 points, write them on note cards and practice sort of going between them, going among them. And this, I've tried this myself, and it helps to calm you, and it helps to sort of, when some mean judge like me is saying, well, what about women? Then you answer the question, and then you pivot back to your point, Otherwise, you're standing up there and you might freeze. None of you froze, to your credit. But if you always have a game plan. It's like, well, I know I want to talk about whatever, tyranny, or I want to talk about Locke, or I want to talk about this, or I want to talk about that. Helps to organize your thoughts. So you may have done some version of that already, but it's helpful. It's funny, you think you have all this time to make a speech, and then you stand up at oral argument, and before you know it, it's over. And that's how it is for lawyers. For judges, it seems like it goes forever, but not here. Only in real life.
This is fun.
Yeah,
Do you have any questions you'd like to ask from us?
Yeah.
Either team?
Yes.
Could we just quickly ask about the use of sources and how you believe those should be distributed, how many should be used, and how we can effectively input them?
As many as you can. I mean, when I ask you about the support for the, I didn't actually ask you about the support for how many people are supporting independence or not. I don't know if there's actually any clean numbers. I think you're citing a document that was written certainly from one side. And you said, well, how are we attacking his integrity? It was actually a pretty good response. But bring in sources whenever you can. What's funny about being an oral advocate, I'm sure John would agree, it's not actually what you think personally in your heart. It's what authority can you marshal, bring forward to make your case. And I think I gave you like 30 something primary sources or 20 something. There are a lot of them. So you have corpus, right? You have a lot to work with. But I think that's the answer is as many as you can.
Yeah, no, that's I agree. 100%.
Any questions on this side? No, you all did wonderful. And again, I know we're a hot bench, as they might say, but it's only because you could handle it. Like I've done moot courts where like, okay, these people are not ready. I just pull back, let them talk. And that's like the worst sign of the world. When the bench goes cold, it means you've probably lost. So when the bench is nice and hot and asking lots of questions, interrupting you because they're engaged and they're interested and they think you can handle it. It's sort of you go to an oral argument sometime, the judge they're checked out. It's like this case is so easy. But for moot court, we're trying to give you the experience, not for our edification, it's for your experience.
Yes, I mean, we'll decide now who to advance, but, and I don't know who's gonna advance, but please know, you all did very, very well. However this comes out, and you should feel very good about what you've done here today.
Yes, ma'am.
I actually do have a question. So we had like a more extreme version of our opening statement. And like, because we definitely tried to use like the most, like a more divisive argument. And
That's also what it was, I'm curious.
Yeah, what is it? What is the?
Then you
extreme?
piqued my curiosity.
well, so we were gonna say like the British government, none of the actions of the British government constitute tyranny. And then we were thinking like maybe we could dichotomize like this is what a tyrannical government would do, and this is what the British government actually did. And then we would keep doing that for every single.
Well, that's a thought. I would think on your side, you don't want to, you want to concede certain things.
Yeah.
You want to concede, well, maybe that went too far. And maybe there could be a reasonable disagreement over, say, abolishing the government of Massachusetts. You know, but by the same token, here's why that was necessary. So you wanna, my approach would be always, in oral arguments, would be always to concede what you can. Because all of a sudden you seem reasonable. Whereas if you concede nothing, it's all good, where everything we did was fine, they're just bad. That is a harder case to make.
Yeah, it rarely works when you go super hard. I mean, maybe in a trial court, if you're appealing to a jury, that might be more effective in some cases, but for an appellate body, the appellate judge can feel more sober. Yeah, Aaron?
And this is a pedagogical question. We had Frank Pagliano, who's the Jefferson Chair at University of Edinburgh, come in, and he made a pretty compelling argument that the dichotomy is between a subject and a citizen. And it's evolving from the concept of being a subject, and what Locke is advocating is a change in the fundamental nature of man to the function of citizen. Would that be a compelling argument for either team, should either team advance this evening? Is that something that would be compelling to you?
I don't know. I thought you guys were pretty compelling as it was, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
I mean, that's a pretty compelling argument if it's supported in Locke for the independent side, right? We have the rights of British citizens. They treat us like subjects. They treat us like children. You know?
And if you are a subject, are you disobeying God for breaking free from that? Because that's the argument for the
Yeah.
subject. The crown is God's messenger on earth.
Yeah.
That's how I would argue.
Think about it.
That's
Not
how-
sure. Not sure. All right, I want
Did you guys agree that all men were created equal?
Yeah, we chose to concede.
I thought you
that
had,
law.
I didn't know that you fully agreed with what Judge Maggs was asking you, but that's an interesting point. Really? George III is equal to everybody else? I don't think so.
Locke actually has a really high threshold for when independence is justified. So the Patriots kind of borrowed his ideas, but they refused to apply his limiting principles, is what we're arguing.
Well, that's a good argument.
Yeah, I like that. See, judges love limiting principles, like the favorite thing they ask about, what's your limiting principle? That's the Obamacare.
I win and they lose. That's my
Yeah.
limiting principle.
All right, let's adjourn for a few minutes. I want to deliberate with the judges. And then you just wait in the lobby out there. We'll grab you when we,
Could we take a photo of the team?
we're gonna have lots of time to picture that, I promise. My good friend Joshua will take lots of pictures. You have your cameras.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, council.
There's a pink drink.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, real quick. Hey. Girls, this is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Great job, guys.
Yeah.
Great job. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Good job. Yeah, that's your big backpack.
Okay, respond to a clerk. What do you think?
I would, my tentative thought was that in both cases, team one, the first team better. I feel a little bit like I'm biased because the other side's argument was more difficult, but
I came on the Patriots.
Patriots, the loyalist side in this case, I think they were not very persuasive by coming out and saying, hey, guys, we all have to be hanged.
They were a little bit of.
All right.
And they clearly knew a lot, but they weren't as well. Maybe that's.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this particular one. Well, you can say what you say.
My view was on both cases, both arguments, team one, the Patriots seemed a little stronger. And I said I was a little worried that the substance of the argument might be biasing me.
Never gonna be that.
Five.
Let's start there. Sorry. You know, on the fifth group, I thought they were more evenly matched. But I thought that the two young fellows, they spoke rather quickly and they were not as engaged in answering the questions. So I would give a little bit of edge to team one, the first one, and then team two on the second round. I thought team two's position was overly extreme and that they sort of missed the cues and the idea that they should be a little less doctrinaire on this whole treason thing. But
So you favor both petitioner teams to advance?
yes,
Both teams one and team three.
Yeah.
So the guy and the girl, and then the two girls over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's a close question.
it's a close thing. None of them did a bad job. You
Yeah.
can see why we're all here.
I felt bad. The girl who dressed said no to her partner. She didn't say that it would have been better. I wouldn't have hit her because the question about, where one girl said yes, one said no.
That didn't really bother me,
Yeah.
because I think that was a case where, as you pointed out,
Yeah,
it didn't
do both.
quite have, yes and no were both valid answers.
Yeah. And then after she said no, the blonde girl she got devastated. She just looked so sad. And I felt bad about
But
that.
you have to remember also, they're in high school.
I know.
They knew a lot. They have a lot of poise. They knew a lot. They seem to know a little bit too much. I mean, they weren't in complete mastery of sort of the sources and the art.
Just, I'll make sure I'm picking the right team because if we screw this up, I'm in trouble. All right. So just team. So the first one,
Team one.
Lauren. Yeah, I'll just print the pictures. Yeah. So yeah, that's Lauren. So you're advancing this team.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other team that you're advancing is Greenwich. All right. So these two girls.
Yes.
Okay.
Diane and
Caitlin. They're both very good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
they did well.
All right. Excellent.
They did well.
All right.
They all did well, and we made
Yeah.
made that clear that they're.
Yeah. I don't usually pick a best oral list the final round, but if you had to pick best oral list from today, I'll tell them later. I'm not going to announce it now, just so I know. Would the best oral list have been a team that didn't advance? Maybe that might be.
I'd have to give it some more thought. If best oralist is sort of the person who had the most polished presentation
Yeah.
over, because I thought this girl, actually the one who I thought knew the most was this girl on the end here in the second.
Eileen?
yeah, Eileen.
She clearly knew the sources in a really, really specific way.
Yeah.
It had trouble getting out.
Yeah, a little bit less polished, just it, yeah, no, I agree, and Lauren and Sir were really sharp. Okay, let me bring them all in, and just so you know, after this, we're gonna go visit with Justice Kavanaugh for, he's gonna host us in a fucking hour-long chat, kind of like.
That's great.
I wasn't expecting it, but that's cool.
That's great.
They don't know that yet, I haven't told them, because they keep it so secret now, we can't take pictures of the court, the protocols are just.
We can all understand.
Are wild. All right, thanks. This was fun. You enjoy this? You have fun?
Yes, yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
They're 16, 17 years old. It's remarkable.
Yeah,
I was to say,
they're
I'm doing this
they're
stuff.
doing-
All right, let me bring the teams back in. We'll announce the winners. Then give some feedback. I want to take a bunch of pictures if that's okay with you all.
Sure.
All right, everyone.
That's in McLean. My family lives in McLean. You have to split the time between there and Baton Rouge. Which means I'm on the southwest New World Square.
Now, the results, they went through the group photos, might take a while. Awesome. You enjoyed it? It was fun? Yeah, was that fun?
Yeah, super engaging.
Come on, guys. Okay. Alrighty, so you want to announce for me now? Alright. So we are very pleased to announce the teams advancing will be Lauren and Sir and Caitlin and Diana. This was a very tough round to judge. You were excellent competitors. The difference in the teams are actually very subtle. But I want to just commend you all. You all did fantastic, and we're just very proud that you made it this far. The upshot now is we're going to now take a tour of the Supreme Court. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And anything you guys want to add?
No, just the level of preparation and argument from everyone is just remarkable. I keep having to remind myself that you're high school students. I hate to think what I would have done as a high school student in this competition. I wouldn't have made it this far, I can tell you that. So very, very good. Whatever you do in your university careers, and maybe if you go to law school, I have no doubt that you'll be very successful. But congratulations on
Congratulations. And teams in advance, I'm just very proud of you. You're all juniors, maybe just again next year. And there's a lot of, we actually had students who were finalists junior that won senior. It does happen. So motivation for next year. So thank you all. Congratulations. We'll make a lot of pictures, so don't feel compelled. But the tradition I like in the Fourth Circuit, where they always shake hands with the judges after the round. So you want to come up to the teams, they'll shake hands and they come down from the bench. Actually, it's a really nice tradition. I like that one. Did that in New Orleans? No,
I don't think that would work.
no, it's worth walking.
Seeing much walking.
Congratulations, good job, well done. Congratulations, Sarah.
Thank you.
Congratulations, everyone. Congratulations. Congratulations, you're not done yet? You're not done yet?
Yeah.
You're not done yet. Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Glad I don't have to stand here.
Yes, all right, so now let's do pictures. I'd like to do one first with all the students, if that's all possible. We don't just sort of congregate. And my good friend Josh over here, also Josh Beach, so very similar names, and just sort of fool around. And the judges too, come on, judges. Yeah, I don't know how to do this. What do you think, Josh? What's the best angle? You're the professional.
Maybe up so it's not cutting everyone off.
Want me to go behind the bench?
Yeah.
All right, judges, maybe we'll just go behind them. So we're not quite so. Perfect. Okay, all right. Look at the camera right there. Now three. Don't know. Perfect. Okay. All right, so now it's just one team at a time as possible.
Don't click it.
I'll just start the Regis sequence and we'll just take turns. You guys just stand off and we can come down with just two of them. Yeah, that's kind of weird. We'll get the coaches on that, so don't worry. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, Holden, do the markman. Thank you.
Awesome.
Texas, let's go. Okay. Perfect. Okay, Connecticut.
I don't even know what states people are from. Connecticut, Texas. Awesome.
Awesome.
Okay, and you guys can now just do whatever else you want with the moms and dads and the coaches, however you want to do it.
Mom,
All right.
do you guys wanna come?
Yeah.
Y'all have a great day.
Okay.
It's been a lot of fun.
A lot of fun, thanks,
It was so much fun. Thank you, sir.
Wait, we can have classes.
There's some mug shots that they put on. Yes, Sunday evening with people travel. My 54th birthday, and I'll live for the country. First, I take a picture with the two of you and my team is Josh.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, but today.
Oh, mine was yesterday.
Oh, her birthday to the 64th birthday. So. Yeah, it's a class of 90.
That's right.
Glorious time to be alive, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I'm just doing this one. See if we can ice boost. Maybe.
Okay,
My
I
birthday.
guess we're doing this one out. Okay, your mug.
Do you want to be in the middle?
No.
Okay.
You guys won.
Alright. Alright, you want to do the same? Okay, coaches, other coaches want to come up?
Guess you're not that sorry. Thank you guys for doing it. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, here. Yeah.
And we'll share all these pictures later.
This, I know. Okay, I'm gonna take. That's the sound it makes, all right. Takes a moment, okay.
Yeah.
Alright, Texas,
Texas, Connecticut, where else?
New York and Philadelphia. Thanks, representation. I was actually somewhat relieved that three of them are on the Amtrak corridor, the airport shenanigans perhaps ago. Oh, one girl. You, alright, New York, come on up. Oh, we got a lot in New York, there will leave.
They also.
Yeah, whoever wants from Regis, come on up. That's a big group shot. They're very proud of your sons. Absolutely.
Really well. Coach, do you have your camera? I'll send it.
I'll just take a photo. Yep. Thank you. Want to do the picture? Come on in.
I'm good.
You sure?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Come on, sir.
The governor.
That's all.
1, 2, 3.
I think we got everyone, we all did permutations. Congratulations to you guys. Congratulations again. All right, great. Now you're off the clock.
All right, I'll see you next time.
Thank you, sir. All right, for the plan now. You don't have to get this report till. It's 11. Let's just start walking over there now. Is anyone leaving now? Or everyone's coming along to the court at least, not like inside the court, like to the court. Okay, so we will all migrate. It's a 15-minute walk. It's actually not that far. Okay.
Are they gonna draw for sides for final stage or later?
Let me do that now. A coin. Flip a coin.
Okay.
Flip a coin. That's okay.
I don't, but I can get a point out or something.
That quarter.
There you go.
There you go. Nickel dime. Sure, flip a coin and. That's the.
You gotta do the little things. Yeah.
All right, I got a. What is this? Smart damn hearing? We're supposed to stand there. Okay, ready? All right. Heads or tails, what do you want? Tails, okay? It's heads. What's my deal one? What do you want? In 30 seconds.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry. You defer, you want to receive?
Okay, Patriots.
Patriots. Royals.
Okay.
Very good. Point. All right, so we're now gonna make our way to the Supreme Court. And bring your stuff. I did it. And we'll take some pictures along the way, the Wicked Shots Capital. We'll get pictures along the way, okay?
That's the fact.
All right, and don't leave any garbage here, so whatever else you found, you get all the stuff from the table.
Gives us capital, constitution.
Yes.
Okay. You know, lemons.
Oh, lemons.
Yeah, so the two are just, I had those species.
Yes.
I got